Jordan Bernt Peterson is a Canadian media personality, clinical psychologist, author, and professor emeritus at the University of Toronto. He began to receive widespread attention as a public intellectual in the late 2010s for his views on cultural and political issues, often described as conservative. Peterson has described himself as a classic British liberal and a traditionalist. Born and raised in Alberta, Peterson obtained bachelor's degrees in political science and psychology from the University of Alberta and a PhD in clinical psychology from McGill University. After researching and teaching at Harvard University, he returned to Canada in 1998 to permanently join the Faculty of Psychology at the University of Toronto. In 1999, he published his first book, Maps of Meaning: The Architecture of Belief, which became the basis for many of his subsequent lectures. The book combines psychology, mythology, religion, literature, philosophy, and neuroscience to analyze systems of belief and meaning. In 2016, Peterson released a series of YouTube videos criticizing the Act to amend the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code, passed by the Parliament of Canada to introduce gender identity and expression as prohibited grounds for discrimination. Peterson argued that the bill would make the use of certain gender pronouns compelled speech, and related this argument to a general critique of political correctness and identity politics. He received significant media coverage, attracting both support and criticism. Peterson's lectures and conversations, propagated mainly through YouTube and podcasts, soon gathered millions of views. By 2018, he had put his clinical practice and teaching duties on hold, and published his second book, 12 Rules for Life: An Antidote to Chaos. Promoted with a world tour, it became a bestseller in several countries. That year, conservative columnist David Brooks, writing in the New York Times, described Peterson as the most influential public intellectual in the Western world. Throughout 2019 and 2020, Peterson suffered health problems in the aftermath of severe benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome. In 2021, he published his third book, Beyond Order: 12 More Rules for Life, resigned from the University of Toronto, and returned to podcasting. In 2022, Peterson signed a content distribution deal with conservative media company The Daily Wire. Early life. Peterson was born on June 12, 1962, in Edmonton, Alberta, and grew up in Fairview, a small town in the northwest of the province. He was the eldest of 3 children born to Walter and Beverly Peterson. Beverly was a librarian at the Fairview campus of Grande Prairie Regional College, and Walter was a school teacher. His middle name is Bernt, after his Norwegian great-grandfather. Peterson grew up in a mildly Christian household. In junior high school, Peterson became friends with Rachel Notley and her family. Notley became leader of the Alberta New Democratic Party and the 17th Premier of Alberta. Peterson joined the New Democratic Party from ages 13 to 18. As a teenager, Peterson decided that religion was for the ignorant, weak, and superstitious and hoped for a left-wing revolution, a hope that lasted until he met left-wing activists in college. As a young man, Peterson became obsessed with the Cold War and the possibility of a nuclear apocalypse. Education. After graduating from Fairview High School in 1979, Peterson entered Grande Prairie Regional College to study political science and English literature, studying to be a corporate lawyer. During this time he read The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell, which significantly affected his educational focus and worldview. He later transferred to the University of Alberta, where he completed his BA in political science in 1982. Afterwards, he took a year off to visit Europe, where he began studying the psychological origins of the Cold War, 20th-century European totalitarianism, and the works of Carl Jung, Friedrich Nietzsche, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and Fyodor Dostoevsky. Peterson then returned to the University of Alberta and received a BA in psychology in 1984. In 1985, he moved to Montreal to attend McGill University. He earned his PhD in clinical psychology under the supervision of Robert O. Pill in 1991, and remained as a postdoctoral fellow at McGill's Douglas Hospital until June 1993, working with Pill and Maurice Dong-Ear. While at McGill University and the Douglas Hospital, Peterson conducted research into familial alcoholism and its associated psychopathologies, such as childhood and adolescent aggression and hyperactive behavior. Career. From July 1993 to June 1998, Peterson lived in Arlington, Massachusetts, while teaching and conducting research at Harvard University, where he was hired as an assistant professor in the psychology department, later becoming an associate professor. During his time at Harvard, he studied aggression arising from drug and alcohol abuse. An article in the Harvard Crimson said he possessed a willingness to take on any research project, no matter how unconventional. While at Harvard, he switched his primary area of research from familial alcoholism to personality and authored several academic papers. Author Greg Hurwitz, a former student of Peterson's at Harvard, has cited Peterson as an inspiration of his, and psychologist Shelley Carson, former PhD student and now professor at Harvard, recalled that Peterson's lectures had something akin to a cult following, stating, "I remember students crying on the last day of class because they wouldn't get to hear him anymore." Following his associate position at Harvard, Peterson returned to Canada in July 1998 and eventually became a full professor at the University of Toronto. Peterson's areas of study and research within the fields of psychology are psychopharmacology, abnormal, neuro, clinical, personality, social, industrial and organizational, religious, ideological, political, and creativity. Peterson has authored or co-authored more than 100 academic papers and was cited almost 8,000 times as of mid-2017 and more than 18,000 times as of 2022. Beginning in 2003, Peterson appeared on television, speaking on a subject from a psychological perspective. On TV Ontario, he appeared on Big Ideas in 2003 and 2006, and in a 13-part lecture series based on Maps of Meaning, aired in 2004. In a 2007 BBC Horizon documentary, Mad But Glad, Peterson commented on the connection between pianist Nick Van Bloss' Tourette syndrome diagnosis and his musical talent. From 2011, TV Ontario's The Agenda featured Peterson as an essayist and panelist on psychologically relevant cultural issues. For most of his career, Peterson maintained a clinical practice, seeing about 20 people a week. He has been active on social media, and in September 2016 he released a series of videos in which he criticized Bill C-16. As a result of new projects, he decided to put the clinical practice on hold in 2017 and temporarily stopped teaching as of 2018. In February 2018, Peterson entered into a promise with the College of Psychologists of Ontario after a professional misconduct complaint about his communication and the boundaries he sets with his patients. The college did not consider a full disciplinary hearing necessary and accepted Peterson entering into a 3-month undertaking to work on prioritizing his practice and improving his patient communications. Peterson had no prior disciplinary punishments or restrictions on his clinical practice. Regarding the topic of religion and God, Brett Weinstein moderated a debate between Peterson and Sam Harris at the Orpheum Theatre in Vancouver in June 2018. In July, the two debated the subject again, this time moderated by Douglas Murray, at the 3ARENA in Dublin and the O2 Arena in London. In April 2019, Peterson debated Slava Heek at the Sony Centre in Toronto over happiness under capitalism versus Marxism. In the fall of 2021, Peterson resigned from the employment of the University of Toronto, becoming Professor Emeritus. Works. Books. Maps of Meaning / I. None. 12 Rules for Life / I. None. Beyond Order / I. None. YouTube channel, podcasts, and social media. In 2013, Peterson registered a YouTube channel named Jordan Peterson Videos, and immediately began uploading recordings of lectures and interviews. The earliest dated recordings are from Harvard lectures in 1996. By the end of 2013, content on the channel included the lectures from Harvard, some interviews, and additional special lectures on 2 defining topics: tragedy vs. evil and psychology as a career. From 2014, uploads include recordings from 2 of his classes at University of Toronto, special lectures, interviews, experiments in Q&A format, and video essays. In March 2016, after 3 years of basic uploading of course videos, Peterson announced an interest to clean existing content and improve future content, including a new experiment in crowdfunding through Patreon. The channel gathered more than 1.8 million subscribers and his videos received more than 65 million views as of August 2018. By January 2021, subscribers on Jordan Peterson Videos numbered at 3.4 million and total views reached over 200 million. From early 2017, funding for projects dramatically increased through his use of Patreon. Peterson hired a production team to film his 2017 psychology lectures at the University of Toronto. Donations received range from $1,000 per month in August 2016 to $14,000 by January 2017, more than $50,000 by July 2017, and over $80,000 by May 2018. With this funding, a number of projects and lecture series were proposed: more interviews, regular live Q&A sessions, public lecture series on the Bible, conversations with Muslims in Canada and the US, and an online university. From May through December 2017, a lecture series on biblical stories was recorded and released on YouTube. A series of live Q&A events, appearing approximately monthly, were released beginning April 2017 through January 2018, then shifting to an irregular schedule through 2019. Regular donations for the YouTube channel were interrupted in January 2019, when Peterson deleted his Patreon account in public protest of the platform's controversial banning of another content creator, Carl Benjamin. Following this, Peterson and Dave Rubin announced the creation of a new, free speech-oriented social networking and crowdfunding platform. This alternative had a limited release under the name ThinkSpot later in 2019, and remained in beta testing as of December 2019. Peterson has appeared on many podcasts, conversational series, as well as other online shows. In December 2016, Peterson started the Jordan B. Peterson podcast. In March 2019, the podcast joined the Westwood One network with Peterson's daughter as a co-host on some episodes. Peterson defended engineer James Damore after he was fired from Google for writing Google's ideological echo chamber. In January 2022, Peterson was interviewed by Joe Rogan on The Joe Rogan Experience. During the interview, Peterson claimed that the Earth's climate is too complicated to accurately model. Several climate scientists criticized Peterson, saying that he misunderstood climate modeling. On June 29, 2022, Peterson's Twitter account was suspended under the site's hateful conduct policy after posting a tweet misgendering and dead-naming transgender actor Elliot Page. Peterson said he was notified that he would be required to delete the tweet in order to restore access to his account, which he said he would rather die than do. YouTube has demonetized 2 of Peterson's videos, one about his Twitter suspension and another video where he said gender-affirming care was Nazi medical experiment level wrong. Also in June 2022, Peterson signed a deal with the news company The Daily Wire, which includes the distribution rights to Peterson's video and podcast library. Peterson will also produce bonus content and specials featuring guests for the video-on-demand platform Daily Wire Plus. Biblical Lectures. In May 2017, Peterson began The Psychological Significance of the Biblical Stories, a series of live theater lectures, also published as podcasts, in which he analyzes archetypal narratives in the book of Genesis as patterns of behavior ostensibly vital for personal, social, and cultural stability. In October 2020, Peterson announced plans for a lecture series on the Book of Exodus and the Book of Proverbs. In March 2019, Cambridge University rescinded a visiting fellowship invitation to Peterson. He had previously said the fellowship would give him an opportunity to talk to religious experts of all types for a couple of months, and that the new lectures would have been on the Book of Exodus. A spokesperson for the university said there was no place for anyone who could not uphold the inclusive environment of the university. Vice-Chancellor Stephen Tupp explained that a photograph of Peterson with his arm around a man wearing a shirt reading "I'm a proud Islamophobe" led the faculty to the rescindment due to a conflict between Peterson's casual endorsement by association and the school's commitment to interfaith dialogue. The Cambridge University Students' Union released a statement of relief, considering the invitation a political act to legitimize figures such as Peterson and that his work and views are not representative of the student body. Peterson called the decision a deeply unfortunate error of judgment and expressed regret that the divinity faculty had submitted to an ill-informed, ignorant, and ideologically addled mob. Self-authoring suite. In 2005, Peterson, with colleagues Daniel M. Higgins and Robert O. Pill, established a website and company to deliver an evolving writing therapy system called the Self-Authoring Suite. It consists of a series of online writing programs, the Past Authoring Program, 2 Present Authoring Programs, which aids analysis of personality faults and virtues, and the Future Authoring Program, which aids in developing a vision and planning desired futures. To understand the statistical benefits of the suite, academic trials have been conducted, and several studies published. Peterson states that more than 10,000 students have used the program, with dropout rates decreasing by 25% and grade point averages rising by 20%. The Future Authoring Program has been used with McGill University undergraduates on academic probation to improve grades, and since 2011 by the Rotterdam School of Management, Erasmus University. A 2015 study published in Palgrave Communications showed a significant reduction in ethnic and gender group differences in performance, especially among ethnic minority male students. In 2020, the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario published a study within its Access and Retention Consortium. As HECO is an agency of Ontario government, this study represents published research for broader public awareness and application. To support this, several institutions were represented in the research: Mohawk College, University of Ottawa, University of Toronto, Queen's University. The program was tested at Mohawk College, and found similar results as with other studies. Views. Peterson has characterized himself politically as a classic British liberal and a traditionalist. He has stated that he is commonly mistaken as right-wing. Peterson supports universal health care, redistribution of wealth towards the poor, and the decriminalization of drugs. The New York Times described Peterson as conservative-leaning, and the Washington Post described him as an aspiring conservative thought leader. Yoram Hazney wrote in the Wall Street Journal that the startling success of his elevated arguments for the importance of order has made him the most significant conservative thinker to appear in the English-speaking world in a generation. Wall Street Journal editorial page writer Barton Swaim wrote, I wouldn't describe as a conservative. His interest lies in individual rather than societal order, and he says little about public policy. But it's true that he not infrequently winds up holding conservative viewpoints on cultural matters. The American Conservative wrote that, while Peterson has abjured any connection to modern liberalism or conservatism, the biggest tell that Peterson is a conservative is simply that his general disposition toward life and society is conservative. In the Los Angeles Times, libertarian journalist Kathy Young commented that Peterson's ideas are a mixed bag. He says some sensible and insightful things, and he says some things that rightly draw criticism. But you wouldn't know this from reading Peterson's critics, who generally cast him as a far-right boogeyman riding the wave of a misogynistic backlash. That's a mistake. Nathan J. Robinson of the left-wing magazine Current Affairs writes that Peterson has been seen as everything from a fascist apologist to an Enlightenment liberal, because his vacuous words are a kind of Rorschach test onto which countless interpretations can be projected. Helen Lewis of Australian Financial Review commented that Peterson is, in many ways, countercultural. He doesn't offer get-rich-quick schemes, or pick-up techniques. He is not libertine or libertarian. He promises that life is a struggle, but that it is ultimately worthwhile. Academia and political correctness. Peterson suggests that universities are largely responsible for a wave of political correctness that has appeared in North America and Europe, saying that he had watched the rise of political correctness on campuses since the early 1990s. Peterson believes the humanities have become corrupt and less reliant on science, in particular sociology. He contends that proper culture has been undermined by postmodernism and neo-Marxism. Peterson's critiques of political correctness range over issues such as postmodernism, postmodern feminism, white privilege, cultural appropriation, and environmentalism. His social media presence has magnified the impact of these views. Simona Kaios of the Globe and Mail wrote that few University of Toronto professors in the humanities and social sciences have enjoyed the global name recognition Professor Peterson has won. Writing in the National Post, Chris Selly said that Peterson's opponents had underestimated the fury being inspired by modern preoccupations like white privilege and cultural appropriation, and by the marginalization, shouting down or outright cancellation of other viewpoints in polite society's institutions, while Tim Lott stated, in The Spectator, that Peterson became an outspoken critic of mainstream academia. According to a master's thesis completed by one of Peterson's students, Christine Brophy, and advised by Peterson along with psychologist Nicholas Rule, political correctness exists in two types: PC egalitarianism and PC authoritarianism. Jason McBride suggests that Peterson places classical liberals in the former, and so-called social justice warriors, in the latter. The study, which focused on the relationship between political belief and personality, also found an overlap between PC authoritarians and right-wing authoritarians. Psychologist Daniel Burston has critiqued Peterson's views on academia. On Marxism, postmodernism, and feminism, Burston faults Peterson's thought as oversimplified. On the general state of academia, Burston generally agrees with Peterson's criticisms of identity politics in academia, as well as with Peterson's charge that academia is riddled with left-wing bias and political correctness. On summarizing the decline of the university, Burston disagrees with Peterson's critique against the left, arguing that Peterson overlooks the degree to which the current decline of the humanities and social sciences is due to university administration focus. Postmodernism and identity politics. Gender and gender expression. Peterson has argued that there is an ongoing crisis of masculinity and backlash against masculinity in which the masculine spirit is under assault. He has argued that the left characterizes the existing societal hierarchy as an oppressive patriarchy but don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence. He has said men without partners are likely to become violent, and that male violence is reduced in societies in which monogamy is a social norm. He has attributed the rise of Donald Trump and far-right European politicians to what he says is a negative reaction to a push to feminize men, saying if men are pushed too hard to feminize they will become more and more interested in harsh, fascist political ideology. In 2018, he attracted considerable attention in the UK after a Channel 4 interview in which interviewer Cathy Newman's manner of questioning on the topic of the gender pay gap was notable. He disputed the contention that the disparity was solely due to sexual discrimination. Peterson believes that order is masculine and chaos is feminine, and that these are inherent to human existence. To Peterson, culture is symbolically, archetypally, mythically male, while chaos, the unknown, is symbolically associated with the feminine. He has expressed that while it may be considered unfortunate that this is the case, any attempt to change or subvert these traits would result in a loss of humanity, saying, you can say, well, isn't it unfortunate that chaos is represented by the feminine? Well, it might be unfortunate, but it doesn't matter because that is how it's represented. And there are reasons for it. You can't change it. It's not possible. This is underneath everything. If you change those basic categories, people wouldn't be human anymore. We wouldn't be able to talk to these new creatures. Peterson has said that gay kids are being convinced they're transsexual. Well, that's not so good for gay people, is it? And that there's certainly a lot of confused adolescents who could be enticed into narcissistic abnormality as a consequence of attention seeking. Bill C-16. Climate change. Peterson doubts the scientific consensus on climate change, saying he is very skeptical of the models that are used to predict climate change, and that you can't trust the data because too much ideology is involved. Appearing on the Joe Rogan Experience in 2022, Peterson claimed that there is no such thing as climate and questioned the accuracy of climate modeling. Climate scientists accused Peterson of being stunningly ignorant and of confusing weather forecasting with climate modeling. In response to various criticisms, Peterson cited climate skeptic Fred Singer as a source. Religion. In a 2017 interview, Peterson was asked if he was a Christian. He responded, "I suppose the most straightforward answer to that is yes." When asked if he believes in God, Peterson responded, "I think the proper response to that is no, but I'm afraid he might exist." Writing for The Spectator, Tim Lott said Peterson draws inspiration from the Jungian interpretation of religion and holds views similar to the Christian existentialism of Søren Kierkegaard and Paul Tillich. Lott also said that Peterson has respect for Taoism, as it views nature as a struggle between order and chaos and posits life would be meaningless without this duality. He has also expressed his admiration for some of the teachings of the Eastern Orthodox Church. Writing in Psychoanalysis, Politics, and the Postmodern University, Daniel Burston argues that Peterson's views on religion reflect a preoccupation with what Tillich calls the vertical or transcendent dimension of religious experience but demonstrate little or no familiarity with what Tillich termed the horizontal dimension of faith, which demands social justice in the tradition of the biblical prophets. Influence. In 2018, Khalifa Sunne wrote in The New Yorker that Peterson is now one of the most influential and polarizing public intellectuals in the English-speaking world. In 2022, Mick Brown wrote in the Daily Telegraph that Peterson has become the most visible, outspoken, and certainly the most polarizing figure in the culture wars between left and right, challenging the new orthodoxies of political correctness that have permeated academia, education, and political and cultural life. In August 2018, Caitlin Flanagan of The Atlantic argued that Peterson is popular because he offers an alternative means of understanding the world to a very large group of people who have been starved for one. His audience is huge and ever more diverse, but a significant number of his fans are white men. The automatic assumption of the left is that this is therefore a red-pilled army, but the opposite is true. The alt-right venerates identity politics just as fervently as the left. In contrast, in March 2018, Zach Beecham of Vox argued that Peterson is popular because he is tailor-made to our political moment. His reactionary politics and talents as a public speaker combine to be a perfect fit for YouTube and the right-wing media, where videos of conservatives destroying weak-minded liberals routinely go viral. Peterson's denunciations of identity politics and political correctness are standard-issue conservative, but his academic credentials make his pronouncements feel much more authoritative than your replacement-level Fox News commentator. According to Olivia Wilde, the sinister character Frank in her 2022 movie Don't Worry Darling was inspired by Peterson, whom she described as a pseudo-intellectual hero to the incel community. Peterson called the film the latest bit of propaganda disseminated by the woke, self-righteous bores and bullies who now dominate Hollywood. He also criticized the term incel, calling it a casual insult for men who are lonesome and they don't know what to do and everyone piles abuse on them. Personal life. Peterson married Tammy Roberts in 1989. The couple have a daughter, Mikla, and a son, Julian. Mikla had suffered from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which required a hip and ankle replacement when she was 17 years old. She also suffered from chronic fatigue and depression. Mikla adopted a diet that she calls the Lion Diet, consisting of beef, lamb, salt, and water, which she claims helped reduce the negative impact of her multiple disorders. In 2019, Tammy was diagnosed with a rare type of kidney cancer. After 2 surgeries, she survived the cancer. Starting around 2000, Peterson began collecting Soviet-era paintings. The paintings are displayed in his house as a reminder of the relationship between totalitarian propaganda and art, and as examples of how idealistic visions can become totalitarian oppression and horror. In 2016, Peterson became an honorary member of the extended family of Charles Joseph, a Kwakwaka'wakw artist, and was given the name Alastalaji. The Kwakwaka'wakw are one of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest Coast. Health problems. In 2016, Peterson had a severe autoimmune reaction to food and was prescribed clonazepam, a benzodiazepine. Later that year, he went on a strict diet consisting only of meat and some vegetables promoted by his daughter, a nutrition influencer with no medical credentials, in an attempt to control his severe depression and the effects of an autoimmune disorder including psoriasis and uveitis. In mid-2018, he stopped eating vegetables altogether, and continued eating only beef, salt, and water. In April 2019, his prescribed dosage of clonazepam was increased to deal with anxiety he was experiencing as a result of his wife's cancer diagnosis. Starting several months later, he made various attempts to lessen his intake or stop taking the drug completely, but experienced horrific benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome. According to his daughter, Peterson and his family were unable to find doctors in North America who were willing to accommodate their treatment desires, so in January 2020, Peterson, his daughter, Mikla's husband, and Mikla's daughter flew to Moscow, Russia, for Peterson's treatment. Doctors there diagnosed Peterson with pneumonia in both lungs upon arrival, and he was put into a medically induced coma for 8 days. Peterson spent 4 weeks in the intensive care unit, during which time he allegedly exhibited a temporary loss of motor skills. Several months after his treatment in Russia, Peterson and his family moved to Belgrade, Serbia, for further treatment. In June 2020, Peterson made his first public appearance in over a year, when he appeared on his daughter's podcast, recorded in Belgrade. He said that he was back to my regular self, other than feeling fatigue, and was cautiously optimistic about his prospects. He also said that he wanted to warn people about the dangers of long-term use of benzodiazepines. In August 2020, his daughter announced that her father had contracted COVID-19 during his hospital stay in Serbia. 2 months later, Peterson posted a YouTube video to inform viewers that he had returned home and aimed to resume work in the near future. Bibliography. Books. Select publications. Peterson J.B., Rothfleisch J., Zalazzo P., Pill R.O. Acute Alcohol Intoxication and Cognitive Functioning. Journal of Studies on Alcohol. 51, 114-122. doi 10.1528/JSA.1990.51.114. PMID 230-8348. Pill R.O., Peterson J.B., Fin Pr. Inherited Predisposition to Alcoholism, Characteristics of Sons of Male Alcoholics. Journal of Abnormal Psychology. 99, 291-301. doi 10.1037/0021-843x.99.3.291. PMID 221-2280. Pill R.O., Peterson J.B., Lau M.A. A Biosocial Model of the Alcohol-Aggression Relationship. Journal of Studies on Alcohol, Supplement. 11, 128-139. doi 10.1528/JSAS.1993.S11.128. PMID 841-0954. Stewart S.H., Peterson J.B., Pill R.O. Anxiety Sensitivity and Self-Reported Alcohol Consumption Rates in University Women. Journal of Anxiety Disorders. 9, 283-292. doi 10.1016/0887-618500009D. Peterson J.B., Smith K.W., Carson S. Openness and extroversion are associated with reduced latent inhibition, replication and commentary. Personality and individual differences. 33, 1137-1147. CITES IRCS 10.1.1.996.7108. doi 10.1016/S019-1-8869000004-1. DeYoung C.G., Peterson J.B., Higgins D.M. Higher order factors of the Big Five predict conformity, are there neuroses of health? Personality and individual differences. 33, 533-552. CITES IRCS 10.1.1.548.5403. doi 10.1016/S019-1-8869000171-4. Carson S.H., Quilty L.C., Peterson J.B. Decreased latent inhibition is associated with increased creative achievement in high-functioning individuals. Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. 85, 499-506. doi 10.1037/00223514.85.3.499. PMID 144987885. DeYoung C.G., Peterson J.B., Higgins D.M. Sources of Openness/Intellect, Cognitive and Neuropsychological Correlates of the Fifth Factor of Personality. Journal of Personality. 73, 825-858. CITES IRCS 10.1.1.495.418. doi 10.1111/J.1467-6494.2005.00330.x. PMID 15958-136. Carson S.H., Quilty L.C., Peterson J.B. Reliability, Validity, and Factor Structure of the Creative Achievement Questionnaire. Creativity Research Journal. 17, 3750. doi 10.1207/S153269334CRJ1701_4 S2CID 146304521 Mar R.A., Oatley K., Hirsch J.B., Paz J.D., Peterson J.B. Bookworms vs. Nerds, Exposure to Fiction vs. Non-Fiction, Divergent Associations with Social Ability, and the Simulation of Fictional Social Worlds. Journal of Research in Personality. 40, 694-712. doi 10.1016/J.PY2005.08.002. DeYoung C.G., Hasher L., Jakik M., Krieger B., Peterson J.B. Morning people are stable people, circadian rhythm and the higher order factors of the Big Five. Personality and individual differences. 43, 267-276. doi 10.1016/J.Paid.2006.11.030. DeYoung C.G., Quilty L.C., Peterson J.B. Between Facets and Domains, 10 Aspects of the Big Five. Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. 93, 888-96. doi 10.1037/002223514.93.5.880. PMID 17983306. S2CID 826-1816. Mar R.A., Oatley K., Peterson J.B. Exploring the link between reading fiction and empathy, ruling out individual differences and examining outcomes. The European Journal of Communication Research. 34, 407-429. doi 10.1515/COMM.2009.025. S2CID 169536763. Hirsch J.B., DeYoung C.G., Sue X., Peterson J.B. Compassionate Liberals and Polite Conservatives, Associations of Agreeableness with Political Ideology and Moral Values. Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin. 95, 655-664. doi 10.1176/01461672103668854. PMID 20371797. S2CID 154242776. Morisano D., Hirsch J.B., Peterson J.B., Pill R.O., Shore B.M. Setting, elaborating, and reflecting on personal goals improves academic performance. Journal of Applied Psychology. 36, 255-264. doi 10.1037/0018478. PMID 20230067. Hirsch J.B., Mar R.A., Peterson J.B. Psychological Entropy, a Framework for Understanding Uncertainty-Related Anxiety. Psychological Review. 119, 304-320. doi 10.1037/0026767. PMID 222505757.